let's get this started. So I'll introduce myself first. This is Greg. I'm the product manager at Mentor.Social. And the purpose of this interview is to explore the journey of other mentors and mentees. Right now, we have a mentor. It's going to explain his journey through his career, how he got into it, his career progress, how he progressed through his career and got to where he is right now, and why he's so passionate about mentorship and why he wants to help people. So, to start off, you can introduce yourself.
Sure. So, as I said, my name is Ben Birnbaum. Spent the past 13 years in product development and consulting related to technology. And before that, I was in the Marine Corps, which is kind of the foundation for who I am and how I've approached product. And I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit more. And I got into product development just by accident, actually. When I left the military and grad school, it was the recession time, and the only company hiring was one of the larger employers here in Kansas City called Cerner. And so that's how I got my start. And here I am 13 years later, and I would have never guessed it in a million years because I was always more of a consumer of technology rather than someone that geeked out by it.
Okay, cool, cool. Was it an educational journey that got you there, or was it just the military?
It was really just opportunity that I saw in front of me. So I went to
Mm,
my undergraduate degree is in political science. Actually, at the time, the plan was to be a career lifer in the military, and then after that, my dream was to be a diplomat. And after my first deployment, that was to Iraq, got back and met my wife, or my future wife at the time, who was pretty deeply rooted here in Kansas
mm,
City. So kind of changed plans. And then for grad school, I got my
mm.
MBA with a focus in organizational behavior. So how do the people side of things within a company impact their strategy and their overall effectiveness, and what are the different lenses that you can look at problems through in order to figure out what could
Mm.
be preventing a company from meeting its goals. So none of mine was foundational and from an educational sense. I have definitely done a number of different certifications and trainings related to product management and project management that's helped me along the way. But really, I feel like
Yeah.
a good product person, foundational education is helpful. I like people that have atypical backgrounds, and really one of the most important things in my
Yeah.
eyes that the product person can have is curiosity. From there, you can as long as you have that, you can really do some amazing things in product.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that because that shows the younger generation, like, you don't have to have it all figured out from high school. I have a
No,
bachelor's in biology. I'm working in the lab, but still able to get product management, just use the skills that I learned, things that I did in the past, and could transfer it over into product management. So you don't have to have everything all figured out right away. You could use past skill, other related degrees, and transfer that to a career field or like.
you're 100% right. Like, having a biology background, working on the bench in the lab, that teaches you structure, right? You can't corrupt the process, or else the results are going to be corrupt, right? And there's really no every field has some aspect of it that can become a strength in product management. And there's one,
Mm,
just a simple example.
yeah, exactly. Are there any mentors, role models, or people who play a significant role in your career?
Yeah, so I had a number of mentors through the Marine Corps. I mean, it's one of the reasons I fell in love with the Marine Corps is their style of leadership. And I think people have a misconception of the Marine Corps at times, where they think it's a lot of people that are yelling and just kind of constant tough love. And there's definitely that. But what I quickly recognized was that the most effective Marines were the ones that never had to yell because they didn't want to disappoint, and the ones that really took the time to understand the Marines and mentor them. So that was all around me. But in the professional world, my first mentor, and the one that really helped change my direction, I came across because of an organization called American Corporate Partners, who I would love to promote because they helped build a bridge between my military self and I guess my civilian or corporate self. And this gentleman, what American Corporate Partners does is pairs executives within the corporate world with separating service members. And the person that I got paired with was an executive with JP Morgan. And he really helped me translate what I had done from the military and the schooling that I had up to that point and into something that I could talk about to people that were hiring. Because it was still post 9/11 world, and there's a lot of people that obviously they cared a lot about veterans and they wanted to hear my story, but unless you can help illustrate how you can help them in their business, their sympathy can only go so far. So that was the first mentor that really helped me
Yeah.
and see the world in a different way. And then at each stop along the way, I've had a different person that was really there for helping me grow new muscles, helping me look at my world through a different lens. And that's something that I've greatly appreciated, and always have tried to give back and do the same for others.
Nice, nice. I like that. What's it called again? What's the company called? American Corp
Uh, American Corporate Partners.
American Corporate Partners. Okay, I have to keep that in mind. That's good. I like that.
Yeah,
It,
yeah,
I
definitely check them
remember.
out.
I still find it so crazy how I just met you on Reddit randomly, just a random post. You commented. I commented under your post, or I commented. I replied to your comment under a post, and then went to LinkedIn from there. And now look at us interviewing.
Yeah, man, it's putting
Crazy.
myself out there is not something I've always been comfortable with, but I'm finding new ways to do it now, especially if I'm going to try to do this independent consulting work for a while. And look what has
Yeah,
happened.
yeah. It's crazy. Never know.
Yeah.
Social media. What were some challenges you faced along the way, and how did you overcome them?
So product is really challenging as a role. Um,
Mm,
the landscape is always changing. It's a role to where you have to be really good about what assumptions you're going to make and how much time you're going to invest in validating assumptions.
mm,
But more specifically, I think the challenges that I faced and that a lot of people in product face are one, thinking that you have to be a software developer or someone that's very tech savvy to be an effective
mm,
product person. I've found that that's not necessarily the case, and a lot of times it can become detrimental because if
mm,
ones and zeros aren't something that gets you crazy excited, spending a lot of time on something that's not a strength probably may not yield very much for you. So
mm,
I think that was the first challenge in recognizing um, when is it an appropriate time to go deeper on a technical question.
mm,
How do you expand your abilities around technical needs? And that's usually through developing strong relationships with those that are either because of their role, like they're an architect or an engineer, or maybe they're a product person that their passion and their strength is API design and commercializing APIs to make the what basically drives most of our applications today. So I
mm.
think being very cognizant of that in the product role. The second challenge is around developing your comfort with speaking a different language, especially around finances. I
Mm,
think the ability to be financially literate and in terms of how it drives a business is something that I think every product person just has to confront at some point. The technology stuff,
mm,
I think you can, like I said earlier, you can be successful without becoming an expert on the how behind product development, the tech side of it. But being able to um, assess a problem and determine what is the potential ROI and an opportunity, and to rally your leaders around an idea to invest in it is something that's
mm.
very challenging to learn,
Yeah.
especially if your company is owned by private equity. or other firms like that that have an investment timeline, to where you may be talking to them and about your excitement about a particular market problem and the idea that you have behind it, just
Mm,
to solve it for that market. But
mm,
unless you can break that down into a financial return, you're not as likely to get much traction. So it took
yeah,
a while for me to learn that lesson. And there was a lot of disappointments, honestly, because I was frustrated that why aren't they hearing me? Well, it's because I wasn't speaking the same language as them, and I wasn't thinking about what
yeah,
gets them excited.
yeah. They're focused on the ROI. Like when you bring up an idea, you want to explain to them how much money they'll get back from it. Is that what you're saying? Explain that to
That's
them.
that's right. How much money is it going to cost up front? How long is it
Mm,
going to take to get a return? How
yeah.
long is it going to take to sustain? Are
Mhm.
there ways that it can other ways that it could be that this idea could be commercialized or used to cross sell other products in a portfolio, and what are the dollar amounts behind that? So it
Yeah.
can get really complex.
Yeah. That's what I have that I didn't realize I had. I might need some resources on this. I need help with that too.
There's baby steps. Yeah, it can feel really
Yeah.
overwhelming, but once you find the right person that can help decode it for you, the financial speak of
Yeah.
things, and I had an MBA there. I took financial classes, and it wasn't my favorite ones, but it
Yeah.
just takes some practice and the right people to help you walk through it.
Okay, cool. What challenge I have is prioritization. I know that's a big one in product management. Knowing what to work on first. Like, should we work on fixing the bugs? Should we work on marketing? Getting more users? Should we focus on getting more feedback on our surveys? What should be the main focus in the product backlog? What should be first? How do
Yeah.
you have any tips for how to get better at that?
So first, let me ask a couple questions. What's challenging about prioritization for you?
For me, I feel like I'm just all over. It's like it's hard for me to just focus on the plan. Okay, like in the beginning of the week, the main goal was just user acquisition, just getting 1,000 users, and then after that, then I'll send out the survey to get back those from 50 users. But then after that, then I jumped to, you know what, let's start a Kickstarter campaign. And then after that, it was like, you know what, we should probably focus more on working on bugs or fixing the marketing sequence. I kind of jumped to different things. So was focused on at the same time, those other also 1,000 users. So I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
mean,
What do you think?
yes. So you're describing what every product person experiences, and prioritization is a constant challenge. It gets easier, but it never gets any more fun, unfortunately. And luckily, the it gets easier allows you to spend more time on the fun things. And I would say the one thing that unlocked my lens that I looked at prioritization through to make it a healthier relationship is there's this gentleman named Gibson Biddle who is the chief product officer at Netflix during its immense growth period, and he wrote a blog post on Medium that I believe was how to run how to run product strategy like a board. And in there, the main lesson is being really honest with what is your North Star, right? What is the one indicator that if it goes up, you are almost assured to be having success? And then you work backwards from there around what are the leading indicators, right? So for a lot of companies, the North Star is revenue, which there's not anything necessarily anything wrong with a revenue target being the North Star, but what are the things that drive revenue? And you have to really think about that, because as a developer, right? If you're working, you're as a product person, you're accountable to developers, and they make a lot of small decisions every day. And if you're all you define is that North Star, it could be a little bit more challenging for them to know what if a left or right decision impacts that North Star, especially if your sales cycle is really long. So first, knowing what is that North Star, and then two, what are the leading indicators to that North Star going up? And one example could be one of my recent platforms. Our differentiating strength that we wanted to invest heavily into was app facilitated communications. So we knew that if the amount of exchanges and dialogue going on between parties um, trended upwards, both for new users, existing users, that was going to be something that would not only defend our market position, but would be something that we could easily compete against all the other players that were in the market. So I think that's part one, knowing what that North Star is. What are the leading indicators that you could trust, as if those go up, then the North Star is likely to go up, downwards in time. Part two is being honest about how you're going to allocate your time and investments. And I think most companies get part one pretty well. You know, what is the most important thing? What are the things that drive it that we want to watch? But the prioritization, the allocation of time is where I see most companies struggle, both within product and development and then across, but definitely across the organization as a whole, because it's politics, right? Politics is about the control of resources, who gets what, who doesn't. And so there's a lot of people that are vying for influence to influence your roadmap. So what do? I typically like to be pretty transparent around, okay, over an X period of time, I want us to be spending 65% of our resources and time on roadmap related things. So that could be product roadmap. It could also be the tech roadmap, because you can't forget about that technical debt, because eventually it'll bite you. And then I would say something like, okay, so we have 35% of our capacity left. I want us to be spending 20% of our time on defects or hardening. So that could be random small little bugs. It could be things that, hey, we did a roadmap. We completed a roadmap initiative 6 months ago. We've gotten a lot of feedback, and we need to go back and do some light hardening, so that way it's a fully rounded out feature. And then I save that last 15% of capacity for the unknowns, because there's, in a given week, there's always some sort of emergency that pops up. And if you don't reserve a little bit of capacity for that, you're going to quickly find that you're behind. You're going to frustrate developers, because they're going to have to stop something in order to then go start something else and then pivot back. And so you're going to burn oil there. And the key thing is, it's not a hard and fast rule, right? You're going to have some weeks where you spend 80% of your time on defects and you don't get to the roadmap at all. But how does it average out over time? And luckily, you can use telemetry and tooling like or reporting like in Jira, Azure DevOps. And if you're smart about how you categorize your work, you should be able to go back in time and say, where did we invest our effort? And that's probably that's typically where I would start whenever, if we were falling behind or we didn't hit a certain goal. That's typically where I would start. Well, were we disciplined about where we were spending our time, or did we get distracted by the noisy wheels? And then lastly, I think it's critically
Just a quick
important
question
to,
on that.
yeah, go ahead.
You use story points, right? Is that how you measure how much work they're doing on certain tasks? You use story points, or do you use a different type of measurement tool on Jira?
So it's really just whatever framework that your organization's using. This is another difference between myself and a lot of my product peers is I'm framework agnostic. I like pretty much every framework I've come across, and I feel
Yeah.
like that the best framework is whatever the organization can actually support and stick to and have some good hygiene with. So if you're using Scrum, story points is really, really good, as long as you're being consistent with it and using the framework appropriately. If you're using Kanban, there's a number. If you're sizing your stories in relatively equal size, then you could take that approach. And if not, you can look at your meetings, like how many of our meetings were focused on roadmap versus something else. There's a million different ways you can go about it. You just have to look at, what do I have available? and
Mm.
to be what data do I have to quantitatively and qualitatively reviewed, is to kind of get a reasonable guess as to where that time went.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
cool, cool. You have to get better at measuring. You just made me think about that on Jira. I've been using story points, but I've been assigning the points. I got to get the whole team together
that's
to
right.
structure to figure out what we're working on the most and measure out what we should be working on. You just gave me the good idea.
If you don't measure it, it doesn't exist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone who's just starting their career in your field or considering a career change to enter your industry?
So the first thing that I would advise someone that's wanting to get into product is uh, one, be careful about how much weight you put into observing how someone got into product and thinking that you have to take the same exact path, right? Look
Mm,
at the strategy that they took rather than the tactics, right?
mm,
And that gets back to, let's say the first person you come across in the product world is really strong in API design and commercialization. So they're going to be a little bit more tech oriented, and that may not be your strength, right? I'm a political science guy for undergrad in the military, so it was going to be a while for me to go toe to toe with some of my peers that maybe had a computer science background, decided to pivot to product. So just be very
yeah.
careful about it. There's still people to connect with, but just look at why did that path enable them, and how did that result in where they're at.
Mm,
My broadest bit of advice that I think helps every product person though is learn to be very curious about markets and how to research them. Right. And this is the most fun part of product that I feel like doesn't get enough time and attention. Pick up a magazine, a trade magazine, or look at a company's blog post. So like last industry I came from was senior living, right?
mm,
And that's an industry that's going through a lot of transformation right now, and they're learning to collaborate in a new way. So there's a lot of material out there. What are the problems that they're talking about in their world? Um, what are the problems to the buyer, right? The executives that run the organization, how are they incentivized? Who are they owned by?
mm,
What are the problems of the middle management layer, right? Are they able to do the translation and from strategy to execution, and keep the ship operating at a effective kind of tempo? And then the ground layer, right? The folks on the ground in the field that I feel like are most important and often get overlooked because of either time, or they're just not as they're not able to surface their voice as much. Really understand, why are they expressing those needs? What are
mm,
the fears that they have? Again, what does success look like? What's going to get them a raise? What's going to make
mm,
them happier and stick around in that industry?
mm,
If you can learn to spend more time on understanding the problem, everything else in product becomes so much easier. Because if you can understand the problems,
mm.
then you can identify, getting back to your prioritization question, if you understand
Yeah.
the problems, you can identify. Pragmatic talks about the way you identify which problems are opportunities is they're pervasive, they're urgent,
Mm,
and
mm,
the market's willing to pay for an alternative over what they're using today. Right. So
mm,
the more you can illustrate how big of an opportunity is by filling out those three boxes, the easier it's going to be to prioritize. And that's a really important skill that will prevent you from getting distracted, from biting off too much. It's also going to help you learn to say no. And I think that's
mm,
one of the most challenging things about product is you have to say no constantly in order to achieve success, because everyone has a need of you, right?
mm,
You have to really put it back on their plate to challenge them as why it's an important, why what they're bringing you is more important than what your team's working on today, and create and have them help you be an advocate,
mm,
turn them into an advocate for that work, and really collaborating together on building that mini business case because in the end, as the product person, you have to be able to justify your decisions.
Mm,
So I think, like I said, understanding market problems from the buyer and the user standpoint is really what's going to set you apart significantly easier. And the second bit of advice that I would say is, and again, I'm kind of biased because this is my background and my strength, but really learn how to be diplomatic and develop relationships with everyone that's involved with developing and delivering product. I've been in a number of organizations where they are a well above average product and development team, creating some of the most ingenious solutions to problems in order to keep moving forward. And our success could be limited or accelerated based on how well we translate what we're doing within product into something that we can involve and hand off to all the other delivery channels that are involved: sales, marketing, account
mm,
management, support, even finance. So I think that's going to
yeah.
be the other skill. And I would be that's take the path of being a diplomat rather than isolating yourself and feeling like your team knows what's best. And if people just stop interrupting you, we could get it done. They're going to keep interrupting you, so you got to find a way to service their need otherwise.
Okay. Okay. That's good. One more question, because I think we have 4 minutes left. How do you maintain healthy work-life balance, and why is it important to you? This is a big one. I need help with this too.
Yeah, yeah, it took a long time to learn how to strike a balance, especially in today's world and with the demands that product can bring. But luckily, it ties back into stuff that we've already been talking about. What is that North Star, right?
Mm,
What's going to move the meter for your organization, for your team, and for you? And try not to bite off too much at once, right? I think setting those hours for when you're going to be focusing on heads downward and defending that religiously. So, because it's with product development and technology, it's a topic that sometimes can be very hard to start and stop. Um, Figuring out what are the channels of communication that are most effective for you, and is that something that the team can support? So being very honest with your team around, hey, if it's something you just need a quick answer on, shoot me a message in Teams or Slack. But if there's an action item that you need from me, send me an email so that way I can flag it and prioritize it, and those types of things. Um, and then just constantly iterating on what's
mm,
working. I think the times I've been most challenged with work-life balance is when I've managed teams in India, in Bangalore, and the time difference. There's not a lot of overlap, and fortunately, my Bangalore-based teams were always willing to meet me when it was best for my time, which felt didn't quite feel fair that they were shifting their whole clock.
yeah,
But I think that's the most important, is just iterating, but then
yeah.
just those same principles. What's North Star? Defending that time.
Mm, okay. Man, this was all good. Really good advice. Yeah, thank you. 2 minutes left. Yeah, I don't think I could fit another question, but thank you. You give me faith for
Yeah.
Mentor Social. From Reddit, I still can't get the link. You just after our first meeting on Zoom, you wrote like a little playlist for me, a summary of the meeting, what I should do next. You gave me resources. You did all this for nothing. I didn't have to pay you. You just did it out of the kindness of your heart. And yeah, you give me faith that we're going to be able to find a lot of mentors to join Mentor Social. Because before all this, I was like, people don't want to just help people. People aren't just nice and ready to give up resources and knowledge just out of the kindness of their heart. But you show it could.
Well, the it goes both ways, man. The job doesn't have to be this hard, and I would say most people that I've been around were just they were too busy to slow down to really help navigate. But there was a handful that did find the time, and I'm very appreciative of it, and that's why I wanted to do it.
Yeah. You can be too. I want to be a mentor now also.
You are, man. You're doing it.
Doing it. Thank you. So do
You're
you
welcome,
have
Greg.
any close? Hmm?
Nope, just stay disciplined and diligent, and don't let too many blows bring you down, and you'll find the way.
I'm sad it's over. I want to do it longer. Can we do like 15 more minutes? Any other.
Yeah, we'll schedule another one.
This is good.
All right,
All right,
brother.
Ben.
Have a good one,
Yeah,
Greg.
thank you.
Bye.